Hey everyone, I'm Paul, and aliens landed in my backyard. Just kidding, I built this UFO. On the inside, this thing is a 14-foot trampoline, complete with UV lights, windows, and cup holders. The roof has 12 support beams, and it's covered in plywood and aluminum foil. My favorite feature of the UFO is the round bubble windows. Aliens use them to see where they're flying, obviously. I decided it would be easy to build a UFO if I started out with a trampoline frame. It's already round, and I just need to add a roof and a lower cover. I had my friend draw it on the computer to see what the UFO would look like, then went and bought 2 used trampolines for $50 each. This trampoline is 14 feet in diameter. The curved outside frame is made of 12 sections, and it's held together by the jump mat and spring tension. I decided to add some bolts to hold the frame together. My plan is to make it easier to assemble the UFO, so I'm welding every other joint. I will have 6 sections instead of 12. The legs like to fall off when you put the trampoline together, so I'm adding bolts here too. The outer frame is welded and bolted, so I no longer need the mat and springs to hold everything together. This circle is 36 inches off the ground, and the centerpiece is 32 inches higher than that. This stand is 68 inches tall. The roof supports will need to bolt together in the center of the UFO. I designed a circle with 12 tabs angled down at 24 degrees. I had a friend draw it in SolidWorks, then it went to the laser cutter. You can't really see what's happening when the machine is cutting out the metal, but here's the result. 2 round pieces of 3/16 inch steel with 12 mounting tabs. Next, the tabs get bent down at 24 degrees using the press brake. The middle is cut to fit the 12-inch bubble window. I'm welding 3/4 inch nuts to each tab as spacers. The roof supports will slide over the tabs and spacers. I used my drill press to make 3/8 inch holes in the roof supports. I will be using 3/8 inch diameter bolts. I learned some things about drill bits today. The cheap black oxide drill bits are not for metal. I tried drilling holes in the trampoline frame, and my bit got dull after 1 hole. Titanium bits are an excellent choice for many materials, including metal. Titanium bits worked fine in my drill press when making holes in the thin rectangular beams, but the bit would get dull after only 10 holes in 3/16 inch angle iron. If you need to drill a lot of holes in thick steel, you have to buy cobalt bits. I drilled about 100 holes with my cobalt bit, and it's still good. After I drilled the 3/8 inch hole, I'm going up to a 7/16 hole with a stepper bit. I'm still using 3/8 bolts, but having a larger hole will make the UFO easier to assemble. The bolt fitting loosely will help things fit together if the pieces aren't as precise as they should be. This UFO has 12 roof supports and 12 lower cover supports, so each step is a process. I got pretty good at drilling holes, then using the stepper bit. Another advantage of the stepper bit is it cleans up the hole by removing stuck bits of metal from the edge. Now I have 24 rectangular beams and the round pieces with the spacers welded on. The roof supports slide over the mounting tabs, and the bolt goes all the way through with a nut on the other side. I have the centerpiece here on the stand. These mounting tabs are bent 24 degrees down from horizontal, and the next part is finding out the length for the roof supports, which is 82.5 inches. These pieces will bolt onto some L brackets here, and there will be vertical supports evenly spaced between all the legs. We'll have 12 bubble windows around the UFO, and the doorway is right here. I cut each roof support to 82.5 inches using the miter saw and a metal cutting blade. Each support will sit on a 3-inch wide piece of angle iron. The edge of the rectangle will need to be chamfered to fit in the bracket. I used the gap between the teeth to measure, then cut a small corner off each piece to make it fit in the brackets. This side of the roof support will also need holes and spacers. I drilled 3/8 inch holes, then used a stepper bit to increase that to 7/16 to make the bolt a loose fit. I'll be welding in 1/2 inch nuts as spacers because their height matches the space inside the beam, and the hole is bigger than the bolt I'm using. I used a 7/16 inch bolt to align the nut and clamp it. 2 1/2 inch nuts stack perfectly inside the beam as a spacer. I welded the The brackets fit in the roof supports now, but one edge is too tall. First, I need to drill a hole through the bracket with a 3/8 bolt. This 7/16 inch bit is a different color because this is the cobalt bit I mentioned that's good for hard metal. The bracket is too small to safely hold it in the miter saw, so I'm attaching it to a piece of wood. Now I can chop off the extra material. I learned some things about saw blades today. The metal blades make very clean cuts in thin rectangular bars, but start to get dull after about 15 cuts. The blade gets ruined after one cut through 3/16 inch thick angle iron. After ruining a couple of the expensive blades, I went to Home Depot and bought a carbide metal cutoff blade. This blade started melting the metal and didn't cut it at all for some reason. My little angle grinder chops right through hard steel easily with the thin little wheels, but it's not good for straight cuts. I found some thin 9-inch grinder wheels and used adapters to mount the 7/8 inch hole blades on the 5/8 arbor of my miter saw. These wheels are wider than the angle grinder, so they cut more slowly, but they worked great. After ruining the expensive blade, I finished my brackets with the angle grinder and cleaned them up with the wire wheel. Here we have the roof support with a chamfered edge and a spacer welded in. It fits perfectly on the angle bracket. I will use a 3/8 inch bolt with a nut on the other side to hold it together. I'm using a second bracket on top as a tool to hold the beam in place for welding. The roof supports will be evenly spaced between the springs, and the little bracket on top aligns the beam with the round frame. Now I can weld the bracket to the frame. I'm using a Lincoln Electric MIG welder with a 35 thousandths inch flux core wire. The flux core evaporates and creates the shielding gas needed for welding. It's not as good as using argon, but it's a cheaper and simpler setup. The brackets are welded and the roof supports are bolted in. Now I can remove the jack stand. My UFO bolted together, but it didn't fit perfectly. Some of these roof supports are pushing out on the frame, while others don't quite reach it. Either my roof supports are different lengths, or this trampoline frame isn't perfectly round. I need to find out why this UFO doesn't fit together correctly, so I measured the roof supports, and they're supposed to be 82.5 inches long. This one is perfect, and it fits perfectly. Over here, I cut this one 0.5 millimeter too short, but it's 1/4 inch off right here. Notice that section is in between the legs. Over here, this piece is 1.5 millimeters too short, and it's jammed in there. It's too long. This one is 0.5 millimeter too short, and it fits perfectly. This one's also 0.5 millimeter too short, and it's jammed in there. This one's 0.5 millimeter too short, and it's off by 1/4 inch. Notice that one is also in between the legs. I've noticed a pattern here. The parts that have a gap are in between the legs. This UFO frame is slightly uneven, but keep in mind, this floor right here also isn't flat. I measured all my roof supports, and those ones are perfect. Those are 0.5 millimeter too short, 1 millimeter, 1.5, 2 millimeters too short. That one is 0.5 millimeter too long. That one's 1 millimeter too long. I decided to mark the shorter pieces in green and the longer pieces in red. The longer pieces will go where they didn't quite reach the frame, and the shorter pieces will match up to where they were too long on the frame. This UFO seems like it's really strong, but can I climb on it? Let's find out. And it looks like, yes, it can support my weight. The roof supports are done. Now I need to do the same thing for the lower cover. One bracket will be welded to the frame, and the other is an alignment tool. The lower cover support slides over the tab in the lower circle, and I'm using milk crates to hold it for me. I'm using 3/8 inch bolts here. The crates will hold the support beam for me. I aligned the bracket in between the spring holes and clamped it for welding. The lower edge of the rectangular pieces is aligned with the lower edge of the circle. When I install the panels, they will sit flat against the outside of the UFO. I assembled the lower section of the UFO, and the middle of it is sitting just about 1/2 inch off the ground. On the other trampoline, I noticed the sections with the legs were farther away from the center than the sections without the legs. This time I compensated for that by putting the shorter pieces here and longer pieces there, but I still ended up with a gap in some places. This trampoline is more precise than the other one, but it's still not perfectly round. The lower section is done, and now I stacked the upper section on top. I used the existing trampoline legs in between the frames and did not cut them. The height between the two circles is 26 1/4 inches. With the jump mat installed, it's finally looking like something. You'll be able to sit inside the UFO, and if you feel like hitting your head on metal, you can jump too. One more thing I learned about cutting metal is the blades do better when you cut vertically instead of horizontally. Less metal in contact with the blade means less heat and it's easier to cut. I cut this piece to 27 1/4 inches. I'm using the 9-inch carbide metal cutoff wheel this time. It's cheap and doesn't get dull. It just gets smaller when it wears. This vertical support will need a round cutout to sit on the frame. I made a cut 1/4 inch from the edge on one side. Next, I need to cut a curve to match the curve of the pipe. I've already made a nice template that fits perfectly, and it's right here. The small cutoff wheel with the angle grinder works well to make curved cuts. I have 2 angle grinders, one for cutting, and the other one has a wire wheel. I can switch between both tools and save a lot of time by not having to switch the blades. This curved cut will fit against the round tubing on the frame. The vertical supports need to be flush with the outside of the frame, so I'm clamping this piece of metal to align it. The support slides into place, and I used a strap to pull the frame down to meet it. I used a ruler to align the edge of the support with the roof and lower support beams. And this part also needs to be welded. Make sure to put on your welding helmet to watch this part. The wire wheel is the last step to clean up my welds. I installed 12 rectangular supports. I'm cutting one of the round vertical supports out to make a doorway to get into the UFO. This is the UFO frame completely assembled. You might think I have too many vertical supports, but they're mounting points for plywood. I have to use thin plywood to be able to bend it around the outside, and I'll need many places for screws to hold it. Most custom projects require you to take it apart and put it back together several times. The frame is now ready for paint. I'm using Rust-Oleum aluminum colored enamel paint for metal. I usually spray paint metal parts, but it would make a huge mess and those spray cans are expensive. A can of paint with a roller is much better here. I've painted all the parts and waited 2 days. Now I can assemble the frame. I bought this adjustable height quick support rod at Home Depot. It's designed to hold drywall up while you attach it to your ceiling and for building UFOs. I tied 4 ropes to the frame to keep the support rod from falling over. The roof supports are all bolted in place, and the top of the UFO looks pretty cool with this bubble window here. I made a trip to Home Depot again and picked up 5mm thick underlayment. The plywood is thin enough it can bend around the outside of the UFO. My RAV4 did a great job carrying everything on the roof rack. The side panels measure 28 3/4 inches by 87 1/4. I clamped metal bars above and below to hold the wood panel in place. I'm pre-drilling holes and using sheet metal screws with big fender washers to attach the plywood to the frame. I will not remove these panels when I take the UFO apart. Here I have my window template. The window will be 4 1/4 inches to the right of the rectangular beam, 1 1/4 inches down from the top, and I'm using the level to align the holes. I'm drilling 3/8 inch diameter holes for the window mounting bolts. I can now attach the template to the outside and mark the hole. I installed nuts to hold the template. The top sheet of this plywood tears easily when using a jigsaw, so I'm going to pre-cut it with a razor blade. I drilled a big hole to insert the saw blade, then used my jigsaw to cut out the hole. I've already cut halfway through the plywood with my razor blade, so the top sheet of the plywood won't tear, and the cut will also help guide the saw blade to make a cleaner and more round hole. I also sanded it to prevent splinters. The side panels are installed, and the window holes are done. It took me a month and a half to get to this point. The trampoline has 72 springs, and I need holes to access them. I drilled halfway through the plywood, then finished the hole from the other side to prevent the top sheet from tearing. Now the side panels are complete. I decided to use aluminum foil to cover the outside of the UFO. NASA used it on their fake lunar module. Mine is also not going to space, so the foil will be just fine. It's impossible to do this without wrinkles, but I'm doing my best by keeping tension on the foil and smoothing it out toward the edges. I used spray adhesive to attach the foil to the plywood. This is an 18-inch wide roll of the thickest aluminum foil I could find on Amazon. It's expensive, but this roll was enough to cover the whole UFO. I let the aluminum foil overlap in the middle and kept it as smooth as possible. I taped the edges with aluminum foil tape. This tape has very strong adhesive and it's for heating and air conditioning ducts. You can buy it at your local hardware store. I used 8 rolls total for the UFO. Next step is painting the backside of the panels. I've already done these, and those panels are up next. I'll be using semi-gloss white house paint inside the UFO. I used 2 gallons of this paint for the UFO. The 9-inch roller makes this job pretty easy. After painting, I can cut the aluminum foil circles out with the razor blade. The black plastic ring that came with the windows will go on the outside, and I added a thick foam seal to the window to compensate for the curve in the wall. These windows don't need big 3/8-inch bolts, but they look cool and match the other bolts on the UFO. And that's how the UFO looks with aluminum on the panels and windows installed. Let's take a walk around the UFO. I installed 11 bubble windows, and I'll add 1 more later when I make a door for it. On the inside, you can see the roof supports and 1 more bubble window on top. Now it's time to cut out the roof and lower cover panels. I can get 2 panels per sheet of plywood. I've already made a template, and I'm lining up one edge with the edge of the plywood. I'm attaching the template to the plywood with 4 screws, then marking the outline. I'm drawing lines 1.5 inches from the edge. This is where I will place my saw guide. The jigsaw doesn't do a good job cutting this plywood. It tears the top sheet of the wood and doesn't keep a good line. I discovered that I can cut all the way through it with a razor blade if I try hard enough. I'm flipping the template around. I'm lining up the outside edge with the edge of the plywood, and I'm sharing the diagonal line down the middle, so I only need to make 1 cut with the circular saw. The razor blade makes a cleaner cut than the jigsaw on this big curve. I used 3 screws to attach the saw guide between both pieces, then cut down the middle with a circular saw. If I wear safety glasses with my dust mask, they fog up immediately and I can't see. I can't have both, so I chose the mask, no glasses. I just did the safety squint and did not get sawdust in my eyes. I finished the smaller cuts with the jigsaw. Now I have 2 panels. I need 24 total. My plan is to clamp the plywood triangles onto the rectangular support beams with 3-inch wide flat bars of steel. Each one gets 9 holes, and I'll use sheet metal screws to attach them to the frame. You know your drill bit is sharp when the shavings are spirals. If the drill bit is slow and makes tiny flakes of metal, it's dull. The titanium bit worked fine for this job. The next step is adding aluminum foil to the roof panels. The aluminum foil is 18 inches wide, so I'm marking where the pieces will lay on the plywood. There's a little section in the middle that needs a triangle of foil. I'm using another sheet of plywood to mask off part of the panel while I spray it with adhesive. My technique is to roll out the aluminum foil a little bit at a time and push it down starting at the middle and moving outward to prevent bubbles and wrinkles. It's impossible to make the foil perfectly flat, but keeping tension on the roll while I push it down helps. Add a piece of tape here, then move on to the next section. I masked off the other half and sprayed the panel. If I go fast, I can apply aluminum foil and tape to one panel in 30 minutes. I have 24 of them, so that means it will take at least 12 hours to do them all. The tape wraps around the edges on all sides. This makes the panels nice to handle and no splinters. These 1/8-inch thick steel bars are surprisingly heavy. Each one weighs 8¼ pounds. All 24 add 200 pounds to the UFO. Installing the panels by myself was tricky. It's much easier with 2 people. The technique is pull one flat bar up and slide the panel under it, then slide the panel under the other side. I was trying to complete this UFO by Halloween, and I was installing these panels October 29th and praying that they fit. I built the UFO in the garage, and it's taller than the door and too wide to be moved into the backyard. The only way to move this thing is take it apart and put it back together somewhere else. This is the UFO the day before Halloween. I ran out of time and didn't record video of the assembly in the yard. The lower panels didn't slide in like the roof panels because the legs are in the way. I half-assed screwed them in from the inside, then struggled to install the jump mat because the lower cover was in the way. I added some UV lights on the inside and put 2 Amazon LED strips on the outside, which did not work. I had to make an emergency trip to Home Depot 4 hours before my Halloween party to get new LED strips. One strip worked, and half the other strip died right away. It's still better than no lights. People really enjoyed the UFO because it's cool to look at, and you can climb inside and sit on the trampoline. Also, it has cup holders. This project took me 2 months and about 150 hours of labor to complete. It cost me $3,500. My plan for this UFO is to work on it a bit more and add a liftgate style door like the back of your car. And I'm not really happy with the lower panels yet, so I'm going to fix those up a little bit, and it's going to get better LEDs. And then I will take it to Element 11, which is like a small Burning Man, but it's in Utah. I'll make another video for that, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.